said, obviously we have quite a crowd here today.
Really?
Being here. But that being said, for my safety, I need you guys to take about 2 slow steps backwards. Then take 1 more. After that, try 1 more. Some of you aren't moving much. All right. And I will have to ask you to take a few steps back, only because I'm in the danger zone, the swinging necks, and I'll get clotheslined. So if I could have you actually bump back a little bit further, I'm going to take the rope down so I can stand where the ropes are. Awesome.
Okay, is this
You are good, young lady. Don't you worry. Okay. Can you guys down there hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
We have a cell phone company that sponsors us. That's why I say that. Okay, so who here today is from the Chatters group? That's who's here just because it's Animal Adventure today? All right, good stuff. Now I always ask this: who here is from out of state?
Yeah.
Who here is from out of the country? Who here is from Broome County? That's my case. Thank you for being here. Now, unfortunately, Broome County took quite a wallop yesterday with the flooding and so forth, so we didn't expect much local traffic today, but we're happy to have you all here. So, today for the Giraffe Talk, the way I handle the talk, we do a little bit about conservation in the beginning. Then we're going to talk Giraffe 101. We're going to work our way from those bumps on top of the head all the way down to those hooves. Then we're going to talk baby talk. After that, we're going to open up to a little bit of Q&A. All right. I have a good 30 healthy minutes down here. That's it, okay? And then after that, obviously, you can once again start feeding the giraffes. I do ask you that while I'm doing the talk, please don't feed them their carrots, because that creates the danger zone that I'm dealing with here. So that being said, okay, of course, giraffes. Giraffes are an animal that need our attention. Many of you already know that giraffes, their die-off rate in the wild is quite alarming. We're down to about, I believe it's 80,000 giraffes left in the wild. Now, you might think that's a lot of giraffes, but it's really not. And to put it into perspective with another animal that you already know needs conservation efforts, like the elephant, there's actually 4 times more elephants than there are giraffes in the wild. Not to take away from the conservation efforts from the elephants, but everyone knows elephants are in trouble. But when you understand that there's 4 times more than giraffes, perhaps that drives home the message a little bit more that giraffes do need help. At the current die-off rate, in another 2 decades, we will be without giraffes in the wild. And that's something we need to avoid, and that's the efforts of conservation programs, captive management programs. That is the future of not just giraffes, but many of the wildlife that are in programs at this time. Now, giraffes, there is some debate on how many subspecies there are. Some of the more popular ones you're going to see in captive management programs are your Maasai giraffes, your Rothschild giraffes, and then the most prevalent is like the giraffes we have here, which are reticulated giraffes. Now, no 2 giraffes are created the same, okay? And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But to the trained giraffe eye, and we might have a few in the crowd here, all right? You can identify the different species or subspecies by the patterns. The reticulated, the Maasai, the Rothschilds, very different in appearance. If you don't know yet, you'll get there. Stay with us, okay? So now, that being said, jumping into our Giraffe 101. We're going to start up at the top. Now, baby Sue back there. Now, starting at the top, on top of our giraffes' heads, we have those 2 little horn-like structures, and those are called
ossicones.
3 years ago, nobody knew that. Right? So the ossicones on top of a giraffe's head are very different depending on the sex of the giraffe. Our females, like on April over here, are much more muted. They're smaller. They're not nearly as tall or girthy as that of a bull. And the reason for that is what their intended use is. Now, a female may use her ossicones simply to scratch an itch, where our bull is actually using those for a major part of his life and, of course, his breeding and courting. So what happens is when 2 male giraffes fall in love with the same female giraffe, they fight for dominance to display to her to show her who is the stronger and best candidate to breed with. Now, they engage in what is called a necking behavior. No, Nanny Sue, it is not the same necking behavior you're thinking of. This is much more violent. Our male giraffes will swing their necks into one another, using those ossicones to strike each other in the face, the neck, the chest, and in the legs. If you have never seen it on video, I encourage you to go home, YouTube it. Look at what necking or giraffe fighting really is. It is quite scary when it occurs. However, as violent of an exchange it is, male giraffes don't walk away from it injured. Oh, good, he's going to show you. There we go. But let me tell you, that is a love tap compared to what true necking behavior is. Now, what happens is, like I said, they swing into each other, they knock each other around. Ideally, they want to bring that other giraffe perhaps to its knees or to have them give up. Now, like I said, they don't get hurt from the exchange. The only thing that really occurs is a bruised ego. Now, the loser moves on, but that victor gets to court now and reproduce with the lucky girl. After he is done with that, he moves on to the next. Okay, giraffes do not play house, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. But to simply address the herd structure, females will live in a group, which is called a
Tower.
and that tower is generally made up of females and their calves. They will work together to make a nursery-type structure where the females take turns watching over the babies. Like I said, males, nomadic bachelors, after they breed, they move on. On to the next. So now, moving down a little bit, we have that mouth. And inside of that mouth, of course, you have your teeth. Now the teeth, giraffes do not have teeth on the top and the front. They generally only have, well, they only have them in the front on the bottom. And that's because they're a browser. All right, the majority of their leaf intake is done with that tongue, which we'll talk about in a second. However, at the back of the mouth, there are molars on both top and bottom. Why? Because they're a ruminant. A ruminant is a multi-chambered stomach animal. They chew cud. Why do they chew cud? When an animal or a ruminant consumes the leaf the first time, they get round one of the nutritional value. When that cud is brought back up, they chew it again to get round two of that nutritional value. Generally, there's no round three. It's going out the back door on that point. Now, that tongue, if I could get April back over, that's your cue, young lady. Thank you, Sherry. Now, if April can show off that tongue to you, we'll see if everybody can take a peek. Get her out. Get her out. Keep reaching. You've got more than that in there. Come on. Come on. There. We'll go with that. Now, the tongue on an adult giraffe could go somewhere up of like 16 to 18 inches long. They're long, very, very long. But a really neat adaptation that occurred over time is that giraffes spend 90% of their day with that tongue out of their mouth browsing in the trees. Now, if that was sticking out, that pink fleshy tongue, what would happen? It would get sunburned. So what happened is that over time, the color pigment changed in that tongue, and it turned into the color that you see here, which is more of like a blue or a purple or a black coloring. It actually protects the tongue. After that first 6 inches of tongue, it turns back to pink. Okay? That section generally doesn't come out of the mouth. Now, going down our neck structure here. Now, the neck of a giraffe. Big old vertebrae in there. We as humans have 7 vertebrae in our neck. Many people would think that a giraffe would have 50, 80, 100, 200, but in actuality, a giraffe has 7 vertebrae. Exactly. They're just much, much larger. The giraffe vertebrae is probably about the size from my wrist down to my elbow in length and quite large, quite girthy around. Now you might wonder, why don't they have multiple vertebrae? Think about a chain. The more breaks in a chain, the more links, the weaker it is. If these animals are engaging in this violent necking behavior, if we had all those breaks in the chain, you would see damage to that neck. However, that strong structure is what prevents that injury. Now, inside of that neck, talking more about the circulatory system, we have all kinds of chambers and valves that help control the blood flow from that heart up through that neck to the head. Now, naturally, if you stand up too quickly in a chair, you may get, or out of a chair, you may get dizzy. You may get some vertigo. Well, same with a giraffe. If they're swinging that neck, they're reaching into trees, they're going down to the ground. They would also experience that. However, those flaps and valves prevent it. They play a crucial role in controlling that blood flow to keep the animal happy, healthy, and on its feet. Now, that being said, if a giraffe has to be sedated, and in recent months now, we've learned that sedation on giraffes is a very, very risky thing. Generally, when a giraffe is put under anesthesia, a team of people is put on the head to continue to keep that head above the heart to make sure those flaps and valves function properly. Now, going down to that heart, the giraffe's heart is a very big muscle weighing somewhere about like 25 to 27 pounds.
I keep trying.
Big muscle
Always
that's
too
pumping
late.
a ton of blood through that body. Now to quickly address the coat, the skin, the epidermis. Now I told you no two giraffes are created the same. Giraffes are like snowflakes or zebras, okay? Where no two giraffes have the same markings. Now that being said, we know that April has what on her?
Hearts.
Okay? Now that doesn't mean they won't pass on some likeness. By all means, April's likeness has passed on to Tajiri because he also does have some hearts in his pattern. So they can look similar, but they'll never be the same. Now another neat thing about this skin, this coat, it actually produces a natural bug repellent. We used to get a lot of questions. Do you treat them with flea or tick spray or anything like that? No. And if you actually get hands-on with them, their coat is quite oily. That oil is that bug repellent that helps keep the flies essentially off them. A horse has a long tail and a neck where they can bite the flies off them and so forth. Giraffes don't have that luxury, so that built-in fly repellent certainly helps them. Now, one last thing, the epidermis, that outer layer of skin, is extremely thick. Now, in the wild, our giraffes live among acacia trees, okay? They're a very, very thorny tree that provides the acacia leaf, which is their #1 preferred leaf in the wild. Now, naturally, they would scrape themselves up, but they really don't take on much damage. You'll rarely ever find a giraffe that doesn't have some scrapes or bumps around it, so the epidermis can actually take quite a bruising, if you will, but really does protect what's inside of there. People ask us, well, what about when Oliver swings his head and hits April? She barely feels it. It's just annoying. That's all it is. Okay? So now let's go down to the legs. Talk about our legs here. The average length of the legs on a giraffe is 6 feet tall. The average giraffe from ground to chest, 6 feet tall. Now those legs also allow our giraffes to cover a lot of ground very quickly, allowing them to run anywhere from 35 to 45 miles per hour. If they get confronted with a threat, they would prefer to run away from it. However, if that is not an option, they can certainly stand their ground and fight off the advances of a predator. Now, quickly before we talk about that, what kind of predators might we experience? Well, we have lions. You have hyenas. You will have leopards. Even a pack of African wild dogs can take down the young, sick, and the old. And then also another one we commonly forget is
Crocodile.
all right? Even crocodiles can chomp onto a giraffe when they go to a watering hole. Now, you don't see that too often because generally our giraffes get their moisture content from the leaves that they're eating. But in times of drought and famine and so forth, they will go to watering holes, put that neck down there, take advantage of those flaps and valves, get a drink, and come back up. Now, the defense, those legs, they can deliver a powerful blow. That kick is strong enough to fracture the skull and or jawbones of a lion. Now, lions are extremely tough animals. The fact that that kick can do that is quite impressive. Now, watching the giraffe cam, you may have seen some kicks from April and more recently Tajiri.
Yep.
Not because they're upset with us, perhaps more or less suggesting our time is up in their space. Because if they did wish to deliver a blow to us, our body is nowhere near equipped to handle a kick like that. But this is also what makes our bull a considered dangerous animal. That is why we do not share space with Oliver, because he is a bull, and bulls have two things on their mind. Fighting is one of them, and you can guess the other one. Now, let's talk about those feet very quickly. Well, of course, they don't have feet, they have hooves. Now, just like your fingernails, their hooves continue to grow. So we have to prevent overgrowth. They can become lame just like a horse would with overgrown hooves. So what maintains that in the wild? The hard substrates that they're on. Hence the substrate in their exhibit. The lush, grassy, muddy terrain of upstate New York is not conducive to giraffes. So in here we have a mix of sand and crushed stone, which helps us naturally wear them down. Also in their barn, they have a grooved concrete in there that helps us wear them down as well. But in the event we cannot stay ahead of the growth, what do? Pedicure. All right? If you can teach a giraffe to paint, you can cut their hooves as well. Okay? So what would happen is you would target train them where they present their hoof, put it up on a pedestal, and a trained veterinarian would use power tools or hand files to reshape those hooves to make sure that they are in order and the animal does not become lame. Now, I believe, well, how did I do, Olivia?
Great.
I think so. All right. So, I think, yeah, 100 score. Perfect. So that is our Giraffe 101 on the body. Now we're going to turn over to some baby talk for any of you that don't know much about babies in the giraffe world. So first things first, the giraffe's gestation period is 15 months. April the giraffe likes to go 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. You tell him, Tasha. All right. But the average gestation on a giraffe is 15 months. When that mother is finally ready to give birth, that baby is delivered from a standing position, which means that baby's going to fall 6 feet to the ground. Now, I remember in the beginning of giraffe hysteria when people were very concerned with that reality. And we got a lot of email suggestions of lining the stall with mattresses, inflatable pillows, and we assured them that we knew what we were doing and to trust nature's design. When I say that, it's because nature has that in place for a reason. Number one, if the embryonic sac has not yet been broken, that fall ruptures the embryonic sac. Number two, it severs the umbilical cord. Carnivores will chew that umbilical cord. Herbivores don't have that luxury. That's why many of them give birth in that standing position, because it severs it as they come out of the womb. The other is obviously when a baby drops to the ground, we need to stimulate them. Back in the day, when you had a baby in the hospital, they held it up by its feet, and what do?
Smack
Give
it.
them a spanking, all right? Times have changed. But that being said, if that baby is not yet stimulated, that fall to the ground stimulates them, gets that first breath into those lungs, and really gets them set to go. Of course, keepers stand by in the event that that doesn't occur naturally to step in there, break open an embryonic sac if need be, and make sure that baby is responding. So now that baby is on the ground, what happens next? Well, mom's going to check on that baby, start to clean it off. Ideally, in the first 60 minutes, our baby is up and on its feet and nursing soon after. Tajiri was up on its feet, I believe, after 45 minutes and immediately went to nursing, which was a great sign for us. Now that baby is ready to run with the tower within 3 hours of birth. By then, that animal is ready to run from threats if need be. Now the baby will nurse from mother from anywhere from 8 months all the way up to 15 months, all right? Or 16, or 17, all right? I got some procrastinating giraffes here. So anyway, what happens is obviously the ratio changes. The dependency in the beginning is solely on the milk. Then the solids get to be more or less, the calf starts to consume the solids. The ratio quickly changes, well not quickly, but the ratio changes to more solids than milk, and then we get in a position where we're at now. Does Tajiri need to nurse from his mother?
No.
No, he is way past that, okay? But he still likes to sneak in a snack
He's
from the
looking
milk
at
bar.
He's looking
And mom
at
is still allowing him, but I can assure you, as this pregnancy advances, okay, and he is still with us, she's going to cut that off even more. Now, the average giraffe at a year old, maybe a year and a half old, we should be seeing about 8 feet out there. Tajiri currently stands about 10, actually over 10 feet tall now, close to 11, and weighs at least 1,200, 13, maybe 1,400 pounds. He comes from some very good genes, all right? And that's evident in his growth and success thus far. So now, on that note, I'm going to turn it over to you guys. Oh my. And we can do some quick Q&A to help you guys out with any questions or material I didn't cover.